Sweary Joyce. Brilliant. I better do the old where it came from. Right. We Shall Overcome started in May 2015 and was intended as an artist-led response to the poverty that we were seeing in our communities. We were aware of the fact that over the previous couple of years, benefit gigs out in venues and that had suddenly morphed from the kind of things that you would see before, which were gigs to support refugees fleeing war zones or disaster areas and things like that. Abroad, they were slowly morphing in community support events. So we were now supporting people over here, which was a sure sign that the cuts post 2010 were really starting to bite in communities. When the Tories won that election in 2015, we realised we were in for another 5 years of it. We figured we needed to do something about it. So we put together this group of artists and musicians, and we set up We Shall Overcome. We picked a weekend in the October, and we sent out word, who wants to be a part of this? And that summer, my phone never stopped vibrating. It was absolutely doing my head in. But by the time we got to the first weekend in October, we had 250 events and we'd raised tens of thousands of pounds. We repeated that 2 or 3 times, and We Shall Overcome has slowly morphed over the years into something that don't just happen one weekend a year. Sadly, it happens pretty much every weekend of the year somewhere, because in spite of what you'd see on the news cycle, things are getting slowly worse out there, and more people are feeling the bite. But we run events that support food banks, soup kitchens, homeless outreach, refugee support networks, community support, domestic violence units, youth projects, pretty much anything that needs a little bit of an helping hand in communities to keep it going. We are organised very loosely at the top, but on the ground, We Shall Overcome can morph into whatever your town needs it to be. It has that flexibility that you can run an event for whatever your town needs. We don't tell you what that is. Just stick the badge on it, do your thing, and hopefully that's going to help some folks who need it. We've used that model now for 8, coming up 9 years, and I rather suspect we ain't going anywhere for a while yet. All Unity Shop is one part of that, and I'll speak about that later. But I think it's probably time for me to shut up and pass you over to Pete.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Ed. So I'm Pete. I'm based in Nottingham, but I've come up today to be based at the Station Hotel in Ashton Under Lyne, which is, one of the, if not the spiritual home of We Shall Overcome since 2015. And I'm really glad that Pauline is able to join us. Do you want to say hello?
Yeah. So I'm a bit far away from Pete because Connie, the dog, has decided to get in the middle of us, and I've got the smelly end at the moment. But hello.
Okay, so so I mean, Joe's introduced where we came from. It was really in the aftermath of the 2015 election I got involved. It was that kind of sense that something kind of needed to be done on a more regular and joined up fashion, because having seen throughout joining various campaigns going up to 2015, whether it was DPAC, Disabled People Against the Cuts, tax justice campaigns like UK Uncut and stuff, you're actually seeing that campaigning about the kind of like big abstract issues around the economy needed to be matched by on the ground issues, because the amount of people using the local homeless outreach where I volunteered was going through the roof. Food banks were popping up all over the place. So I used a lot of the organising power I'd had for like alternative gatherings to start doing stuff for food banks. And luckily I already knew Joe. So when I saw that discussion with Joe and our dearly departed friend Steve Goodall on Facebook, and Steve said, if we don't do it, no fucker else will, and decided that what we needed was a kind of like joined up festival of anti-austerity, kind of festival of resistance that combined a raised fist, because we were all really angry and we still are, but a helping hand, because I don't know, I quite like this phrase, solidarity is an active verb. And there's stuff you can do with that, which I think is really important. And people like Pauline and the guys at Hull who are on the front line see it much more than I do. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal. So Joe mentioned the first year we had 250-ish gigs, all happening at the same weekend at the beginning of October. And that was, that was absolutely phenomenal. But since then, we've spread out around a year, responding where the need is. I can see a few people in the room who've been involved in We Shall Overcome events up and down the country. And these events can be, huge events in large capacity venues with lots of careful preparation and so on, or they could be really small. It's whatever it needs to be. And yeah, we've kind of We Shall Overcome's kind of become an umbrella kind of logo under which so much stuff has happened to put something back and austerity is taken away. Okay, that's me done.
I'll come in there if I may. Pete's absolutely right that the whole point of it initially was to use We Shall Overcome as an umbrella. We were aware of the fact that benefit gigs were happening up and down the land because musicians have always done them. But what we wanted to do was put it under a single umbrella, because if you could join all those gigs together and show how many of these gigs were going on because they had to go on, then it gave it some political clout. It showed you that this problem was a national problem, that it was a big problem, that an awful lot of people were having to deal with that problem weekend in and weekend out at gigs and what have you. And there were lots of people were helping, but if you could badge it all up and send it out there and put it all on one weekend and say, look, there are hundreds and hundreds of towns that are all struggling, hundreds and hundreds of communities that are relying on food banks and community support. The political clout was in doing it all together, all under one banner. And that was why we initially targeted one weekend to give it that banner to march under, if you like. And that was an important thing. Once we'd stamped that mark on there, once people knew what We Shall Overcome was about, and once people had got the hang of the fact that in the first weekend in October each year there'd be a couple of hundred gigs happening up and down the land. Obviously, poverty don't just happen in the first weekend in October, so we've had to spread it over the course of the year, which reduces some of the political clout, but makes us a little bit more effective and a little bit more hands-on the ground.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I wanted to say before we go any further is a lot of this has been dependent on musicians, poets, storytellers, and so on, offering their labour for free. So you get an audience to come along, and instead of paying a tenner for a ticket, you bring a bag of food for the food bank, that kind of thing, or instead of paying a £5 at the door, pay a £5 into the raffle, and fundraise that way. Obviously that's goodwill, and we'd never insist people get out, are out of pocket for doing it. But during COVID, when a lot of musicians lost their income, we set up Joe set up a Fight the Good Fight Club, where some of the people had put in a lot of time and effort helping We Shall Overcome. We opened digital donation buckets to support the artists as well. And that worked really well, and it came off the back of the big online festival we organised right at the beginning of lockdown, Isolation Festival, and that was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it?
We were, when COVID happened, we were looking at losing the station, that we wouldn't be able to do what we were doing. And the Isolation Festival and all Joe's work with Lockdown Solidarity, beyond that, kept not just the station going, but helped other groups around the country that are part of the WSO family, or people that were facing really unprecedented need because of the effects of COVID at the same time as people being in massive food poverty. So, we wouldn't still be here and doing what we're doing as a pub and hub if it hadn't been for that festival and the amount of people who basically kept this door open when we couldn't open it and made any money over the bar. So we wouldn't still be here and operating without that having happened.
Yeah, good. And Joe, I wanted you to mention lockdown solidarity because that was phenomenal.
Well, that just feels a bit like a bit like a personal thing to me, which I'll touch on it because you've asked, but basically myself and Steve Nevard, who produces merchandise, T-shirts and prints all the stuff for bands and festivals, we spent 66 weeks in lockdown frantically inventing new things that we could sell people. And so if you own a set of my album sleeve coasters, I do apologize, but they are quite good quality. But basically we were selling all and everything, and each week I gave it to a different cause. So over 66 weeks we put money into 64 different causes. And so selling merch throughout lockdown raised just short of £24,500, which was donated around communities. And the festival that Pete mentioned, the lockdown isolation festival of Easter weekend in 2020, that raised about £30,000 over the course of a day's broadcasting, and it was phenomenal stuff. But as with everything to do with We Shall Overcome, the best part about that day was just people's involvement in it. What it comes down to is the fact that it because it's everybody and not just a handful of people at the top. It's a beautiful thing. So, musicians from up and down the land have been involved in this, and as Pete says, just bless every single one of them, because without them playing those gigs for free and without them bringing their audience into those gigs and donating, it wouldn't have done anything. It would have just been an idea. But the wonderful thing about the Isolation Festival, which was just basically 16 hours of online music in a Facebook group, it was the photographs that everybody was putting on their timelines and sharing into the festival group. They couldn't go to festivals, but they'd set one up in a back garden. They'd have a tent in the back garden and be watching it on a big telly under an umbrella with a lot of candles around it. And they're sharing these photographs all day, and it was just fantastic. You genuinely felt like you actually were at a festival, and it was a really wonderful thing. It was right at the start of lockdown before everybody got too jaded, but it really did feel like you were in the same field with people and shooting the breeze and sharing jokes and the enjoyment of it all. And that's always been the beauty of it. It's a community thing on the ground, and it's about people, and I think that's a really important part of everything, that it has to be about grassroots communities. It has to be about people on the ground, and we've always fought to make that the case, so that it doesn't become about one person or two people or a handful of people. It's still about everybody all these years later, and I love that about it. And these guys here, we had a Zoom meeting in which we sort of we basically give each other a lift, didn't we? And an Old Trades Council set up this whole Unity shop as a trade union sponsored community support thing, to show that the left were active on the ground in communities. And if you don't mind, I'll pass you around a few of these voices, and you can get a little bit of a feel for it. I'll pass you over to Ken first, because he's in charge of logistics, and he's also the shyest, which makes it just amuses me to make him feel awkward.
Thanks very much, Joe. It's a right piss taker, this one, I tell you. No, first off, it's amazing to see everybody here, and these lot will constantly now be tapping their watch at me because of a bit of a penchant for going on. So at some point, one of these will tell me to shut the hell up and
Shut the hell up.
Shut the hell up.
right on you go. Look, I mean, it's pretty much we suffered the same sort of fate as Joe did at the start of lockdown, I guess. A lot of us, you know, a lot of our friends were in kind of quite precarious work, you know, don't have the luxury of things like sick pay, paid time off, furlough and all that. So when the first lockdown happened, you know, the majority of us were basically either sent home with no clue about what to do. If we were lucky, we got furloughed. But a lot of us, particularly musicians and stuff like that, it just literally work stopped overnight. And that was quite a lot of our friendship group. And as well, you know, we do have a link into Hull Trades Council. So we kind of sat down and thought, what we're going to do with ourselves? Because, you know, at that point, there was absolutely no end in sight. And we got chit-chatting about food banks and stuff like that. Although the very first thing we said was, if we set something up, we ain't going to call it a food bank because, you know, I don't like the connotations of it. It does make it really difficult to describe what the Unity shop is if you don't say food bank. So I've just said food bank 3 times in 30 seconds. But we really go out our way not to badge it like that. So we sat down and we thought, right, you know, people need help. And it looks like, you know, if a lot of us have suddenly become unemployed overnight, what can we do about it? You know, can we use the connections we've got, the people we know, and the resources we've got to kind of set something up and basically help people out? And we had absolutely no clue whatsoever what we were doing. And somebody very luckily pointed us towards Pauline, who really took time out of her day to basically sit with us for a good few hours and kind of explain the whole system of, you know, existing food banks and where stuff comes from and where it goes and how all that stuff works. And you know, we're eternally grateful for that, because to be honest, we'd probably still be sat there scratching our asses if it wasn't for Pauline kind of, you know, talking us through how it worked. And essentially it's, you know, we sat down and then all of us, luckily, I've never been in the position to actually need to go to a food bank. So it just occurred to us to kind of look out, have a look around the city and say to ourselves, well, what do you actually do if you're in this position? And then we started to get really annoyed, and it just kind of made us more determined that it then became apparent that these food banks, you know, you basically have to go to Citizens Advice and bare your ass to them and convince them you're poor enough to get a voucher so you can get a bag of food like so many times every 6 months. And we've got lots of pals that literally overnight were unemployed, you know, and it's great saying somebody you can apply for universal credit or whatever, and then but you'll get a decision in 6 weeks and stuff. You know, there's people that need help now. And to add to that, then people obviously started going off on sick. For those people that still were working were then getting hit by COVID. And I'm quite lucky. I'm in a job that has occupational sick pay. But for 99% of people, they were working full time. They got sick with COVID or whatever, and then they're down to pretty much nothing, like overnight, you know. And we sat down, we thought, right, well, what we're good at, we've got loads of trade union connections. We're good at blagging, especially Joyce over here that's made kind of, she's like our chief blagger. But effectively, it was we started up as a bit of a Robin Hood operation. We thought, right, we're going to go out to all the trade union branches in the city, and we're just going to basically solicit them for money. You know, we did this. We approached the Trades Council, and you know, we put it together under that banner, basically, so then we could send hundreds of letters out to trade union branches across the cities, other community groups, organisations, and stuff. Even at one point, you know, Tony and Joyce and whatnot were basically walking into high street shops, Tesco, Asda, Herons, everything, and going, "This is who we are. You know, will you help us out?" And to be fair, although across a lot of things, there's this whole attitude now of back to normal. Right at the time, you know, we were really kicking at an open door, and we're getting huge amounts of donations in. And slowly but surely, we basically built up our online presence and started getting the word out there. And of course, because it was lockdown, we quite uniquely, our food bank was delivery only. And which creates its own logistical problems, as you can imagine. It solves some because we ain't got a queue 2 miles down the street of people that need help. You know, it does mean we rely on huge amounts of volunteers from all over the place to do deliveries and stuff, but that actually allows us to connect and help and support some of the absolute most vulnerable people in this city. And I know Tony and Joyce, who actually get out on the ground and do huge amounts of deliveries, I'll tell you about a few examples of some real particular people we support. But we're at the point now where, since I think May 2020, we've probably delivered about 10,000 food parcels to people across the city, you know, really particularly vulnerable people who are housebound, elderly, infirm, or have disabilities. We start to stumble across a lot of people with quite severe mental health problems, you know, and a lot of people's mental health manifests itself quite simply. They don't go out the house. So there's this huge hidden problem that we just have no idea about. And it's proved a really massive insight into kind of what's going on across the city. And we get huge amounts of kind of good vibes from that. The single biggest thing, though, is after we found out about, you know, the whole application process for food banks and stuff, we basically said, right, we ain't going to have any referral criteria, none at all. So if you need our help, you contact us. And we got laughed at by some people. They literally came on meetings with us and they laughed at us. And they said, you're going to get the piss taken out of you. You will get robbed blind. But the one thing that we absolutely stand to this day is the fact, just because you're poor doesn't make you a criminal. Because I tell you what, this country's fucked because of people in suits wearing ties, not because of not because of Jimmy, who's stuck in his house because he's had a brain injury and he can't work anymore. Do you know what I mean? And out of 10,000 food parcels, I think we've probably had maybe 1-2 occasions where somebody's really taken the mick. But we've turned up to houses and we've stumbled across, you know, domestic violence situations and really bad stuff that we've then escalated to social care and the police sometimes and stuff. And, you know, and we'll just keep doing that. And that I guess is our 2 key messages. We ain't a food bank. We're support and solidarity. You know, that's why we call that a unity shop. And we don't have any referral criteria. We refuse to, because we absolutely don't buy into the fact that just because people are poor, they're more likely to be criminals, because it's bollocks. That probably seems like an adequate place to stop.
That's pretty good.
Tell you to shut up, Ken.
No,
nobody. Well, I must have talked less crap than usual.
To be honest with you, I thought 2 arses and a piss was pretty good swear count for a speech.
I didn't start it. Somebody else on there swore first.
But it's probably a good time, this bearing in mind that it was Pauline that inspired these guys to set up the Unity shop, or at least gave them the template for which to do what they wanted to do already. I think it's probably a good time to pass back over to the station and get Pauline to talk a little bit about what goes on there daily, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's actually going on at the moment, so I've got half an eye on out the window. It basically, for us, we were already doing some work around homelessness as a community pub. So we're kind of 10 years in with this. But then in 2015, WSO started, and it was actually a drummer out one of the bands that phoned me and said, get online, you've got to see this. I think it was the first day that Joe had posted up. And it just felt like a lifeline, you know, not to be doing this alone. And I think that for me is a huge thing about We Shall Overcome. We see when each other are struggling and everybody's got everybody's back, and you'll get a message saying, oh, dickhead, go to bed. You look after yourself. We care about each other as well as about the people who are coming to us for help. And one thing I think that has a massive impact, I mean, we're a community pub and we're also a hub. So we took the decision, after we've been locked down for COVID for so long, that we were going to only open for Friday, Saturday, Sunday as a pub and remain a community hub for the remainder of the week. But we do what we do 7 days a week as well. So it has a huge impact on the people that come to us, because like Ken said, you know, people judge, and it's hard enough to come and admit that you're struggling and that you need help in the first place without having to sit and give your whole life story to somebody with a French manicure and a business suit on through bulletproof glass to get access to just basic needs. I've been in situations where we had a young woman stood under a tree in the rain, and thank God I spotted her and brought her in, and she'd actually planned to go home and commit suicide that day. She dropped kids off at school, and she just felt like an abject failure as a mother because she couldn't feed them. She was just in a desperate situation. I bumped into her not that long ago in Iceland. She's back on her feet. We got her fed. We gave her hugs. We made sure that she didn't go home and kill herself. And we got her quite a lot of support from the network that's grown up around WSO in Tameside to make sure she never felt on her own again. So like the Unity Shop, it's I don't like food bank, the term food bank, and I think it's got negative connotations. It's not about charity. It is about community and solidarity and seeing a human being as a human being and caring. I don't, quite frankly, give a shit what God you believe in, what colour your skin is, who you're in love with, how you choose to live your life. Little bit slightly bigoted against Tories. Sorry, I will admit that one. But basically, anybody who turns up at this door and says they need help, we will do our best to give it. But the only reason we can do that is because we've got a community behind us. And like, Pete and Joe both said, it's the musos, the punks, the poets. We're a big bunch of misfits all around the country that have said, like Steve did, if we don't do it, nobody else is. Because sadly, a lot of these people are invisible. They don't matter to the politicians because they're very unlikely to vote. It's been made increasingly difficult for them to engage with politics and choose to vote, even if they should do. We've just done a piece of work over the last few days with nurses from our local, the local frontline medical centre, walk-in centre. And what devastated me was the number of people who were coming to the door and were saying, have you got a GP? And the answer was no. So we've been bringing them in, and for the last couple of days, we've been signing, or the nurses have been using this as a hub to sign them up so they've got GPs, and so they can then access flu and COVID jabs, which are being rolled out here next week and the week after. So they shouldn't be falling through the net like this. People shouldn't be at their lowest point in life and not be able to access basic help. So Rabina, we're just live streaming, so yeah. So Rabina's just arrived in the building for tonight's gig, and I think that's the thing, that where you look at referral processes or you look at people having to tick boxes. I've had people in front of me who have just taken months to sit down and talk to me because they've spent years being pushed from pillar to post and repeating their story. And it's because somebody somewhere is getting paid by results or needs to make sure they fit in a protocol or that they're ticking the right box. But they're having to bare the souls and tell you the most personal things in the world just to access food or shelter. And that shouldn't be happening. There should be some dignity in all of this. And sadly, at the minute, the system's set up to make sure that there isn't. It's like grind people down as far as you can and, just kick them repeatedly and hope they'll go away. Shockingly, we were involved in a scheme which was called SIB, which was a social impact bomb to house some of the most entrenched rough sleepers. And one of the key workers there told me that if somebody died before they were housed, the box was ticked as outflow, and it was considered to be one less person to have to worry about. A human death being outflow is just unbelievable. So We Shall Overcome puts the humanity back into it because we care about you as a person, and it doesn't matter whether you're tetchy or whether you're smelly or whether you give me nicks when I hug you. I've caught ringworm off people. You name it, it's happened. But it's meant that somebody loved them enough to give them a hug as well, and loved them enough to see them. And one person, a young lady who came through being a rough sleeper, said that she actually felt for so long like a shadow person, that people just didn't see her. WSO is about, we see everybody. They just need to put the hand out and we'll grab it. But I think the fact that there is almost this the cost of living crisis, I accept that there is a cost of living crisis, but that's just a rebadging of austerity. A lot of what we're dealing with isn't a cost of living crisis that is unavoidable. It's a cost of living crisis because the priorities at governmental level are not correct, and they don't give a shit about the mum who's standing under a tree contemplating an overdose, because the big picture for them doesn't involve real people. They're living in a bubble, and some of the MPs that I know who have supported us have actually admitted that openly. We have Angela Rayner, who's our local MP. She's very, very active with us and with stuff in the local community. She's actually been and done a sponsored rough sleep with us and stripped down to her bra in the car park spot, a WSO t-shirt on, but for the majority of people that are in central government, they're not coming and seeing this unless it's a photo opportunity, and then it's manicured, sanitised and made to look pretty, and made to appeal to people who are never actually going to have to access those services. So yeah, I'm getting angrier by the day as well. We get a lot of support from the unions locally. RMT have historically supported us a great deal with donations to keep us going. Nationally, the NUJ did. We've had the local teachers unions around here. I go and talk in schools, and particularly to special needs kids. And the teachers from the local branch of the union supports a great deal and do collections for donations. But we need whole unity shop in every town. And I don't know how we achieve that, but that's what we need, because these guys have just taken, and Ken, sorry, bollocks, you'd have done it without sitting and talking to me anyway. You guys were always going to kick ass because you got the heart straight, but we need normal people, ordinary people, working class people, to just get angry enough to get up and make the change. And yeah, we do need change at parliamentary level, but we need change at community level. And that comes down to us taking the power in our own hands to make a change to the person who's in front of us. When we do that, we can change the world. So that's my gobstone.
That's it. That's spot on, Pauline. And like so many things that they need flipping on the head. Paul Eaton actually said this really well. He said it's not a cost of living crisis; it's a cost of greed crisis. Puts the emphasis back on the people that are stealing money from working class communities to line their own pockets. It's a cost of greed crisis going on in this country, and he's spot on at that. When this was started, we realised that when we came out of COVID, we were going to have a huge vacuum. There'd be a massive financial impact on communities, that bills would go skyrocketing up, that some jobs would be going once the money ran out from the government, and that the knock-on effect of that would be more people struggling with the benefit system. But we also recognise that when that happens, the follow-on from that is that the far right get organised in your communities. So we knew that what we were doing here was always going to be an act of anti-fascism as well as a community support thing. We knew that if we could demonstrate socialism on the ground, on the streets of our communities, that the right won't be able to say, where are these people? They've got unity, but they're never there for you, because we will be there already. And we're trying to make that argument. These need to be set up now before there's a problem, not a reactive thing afterwards, because then it's too late. We need to get ahead of the far right and stop these bastards organising in our communities. And so that was a big thing about what the political inspiration for what we were doing at Old Unity Shop. But that's morphed, and I know Tony is moved whenever he takes parcels. So I'm gonna pass you over to Tony to speak a little bit about the actual frontline delivery.
Yeah, obviously Ken and Joe's covered a lot of it, but a few points what was missed out, which I would like to say, is when obviously we're indebted, I feel, to Pauline and Joe for helping us set it up. But right at the beginning, when we very first opened, we had the right wing in Hull protesting outside the local hotel where there was housing, refugees, blaming everything on them. So we set it up in the Cardiff Community Centre, who'll give us the building for nothing. So, and the reason behind that was not only because the Cardiff community was being so generous, it was to cut across that right-wing bullshit. You know, the Cardiff and ourselves was out there in the community. So when these was protesting outside of the hotels, we could say to them, hang on a minute, what are you doing in our community? So it cut right across that. And then the political side of things, we started off with the political message we had was fuck the Tories, and that was it, you know, until the trade unions got really involved. So then we made sure that, like Unite, RMT, they all give us information to put in the parcels, in the bags. So when we was handing them out on the doorstep, they had some literature to read, and because obviously a lot of people blame, you know, when they're sending us messages for food and that, they're basically apologising. So the message we're giving them is, you've got no need to apologise. It's not your fault. This is the reason why you're struggling. It's back to fuck the Tories again, I suppose. So, but then going from doorstep to doorstep, for me personally, because I'm out delivering every week, the thing that he told me and I didn't realise was the human side of things. Because unless you don't go on the doorstep, you don't really see it. Me and my missus, we receive messages and we've been sat on the settee in tears, not just for the reasons given us, the need that they have to tell us why they're struggling. And it really does it home. I've been out this morning to somebody who actually can't get on the system for some reason or another on his phone. So what I said to him is, just message me personally. If you need full parcel, message me. But every single time I take it, I mean, I've showed Joe one of his messages he sent me, and he's thanked us for the food, and he's actually said it's the only time he gets to eat, right? And that really does it home. We've done things at Christmas time where young kids, 21-year-old, they might have a couple of kids, and they can't provide nothing for the kids. I mean, I'm from a single parent family. We didn't have a lot, but we always had something on Christmas Day. And I can't imagine any child waking up on Christmas Day with nothing. It's heartbreaking. And this young kid who we delivered to, he couldn't thank us enough. He really couldn't. And that's the side of it for me, as took up, even though there's still political message to get out there, it's that side of it personally for me that's really hit home. There was things like during furlough, because obviously in all, you have affluent areas and you have poor areas, and them poor areas was where we thought we would be concentrating on. But as it turned out during furlough, obviously you've got somebody living in a, you know, £200,000 house with an heavy mortgage. She's got a car, he's got a car, they're struggling, they're doing well. Then all of a sudden, he's lost 20% of his wages. She's lost 20% of his wages. And then all of a sudden they can't afford, and they was coming to us, and that was also a surprise. But it also made them realise that they're one wage slip away from struggle, and that's it really. I think I should pass you off to Joyce, because Joyce has been warming up a swear words.
No, I'm leaving the potty mouth to you guys. Okay? I was like, Tony did the same. I mean, I remember it was like Christmas. Tony actually took a football out to one family, and they were so appreciative just of a football. It's like it's unreal that people should have to be struggling the way they do. And yeah, I'm one of the biggest blaggers there is for blagging stuff. Wilco's, as we all know, has folded, but I saw an opening there. We're always struggling for carrier bags, and I thought, yeah, I know they're folding, you know, but we need help. So I went and I managed to blag us some carrier bags for free. So we're always needing them. We've got like Christmas coming up, so now we're last year, unfortunately, we didn't get a single selection box to hand out to people. So this year, we really, really need people to donate us stuff like selection boxes, just to make sure they get out there. I've already started a little shelf, which is Christmas stuff behind me, to make sure we've got stuff to go in the parcels to go out, because there's more and more families that are asking. But I'm also finding that there's a lot of single people, like young men, young women, who are asking, but they're giving us a life story, and they shouldn't have to be giving us that life story. But then I look at the other side, it's also a way of them to let loose a bit, isn't it? Just to unload their burden. Yeah. So then we're looking at it in a different sense as well. Let's say they don't have to tell us why they need it. They need help. They're going to get the help. We're always after, you know, delivery drivers to help us get out. I mean, I can make the bags up. It's just getting them out there. But in the meantime, we have got 2 push bikes, well, tricycles, thanks to Unite the Union for that. We've got baskets on the back, so we can get people who coming in and help build me the bags. They can also now go out on these push bikes, get it out, eco-friendly.
Like them as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that was another bang. I mean, not only did they get the push bikes, they got all the safety gear, they got the helmets, the lights, the horns.
The horn is something to be all though, isn't it?
Well, I didn't even know these bikes have these lights and the horn on it.
Got a visual on them.
Yeah, but they're really a good idea. I mean, normally these trikes are say around about £500-ish. I've managed to get them for, I think it's something like £180 a piece. They do come in millions of pieces that did have to be built, and it did take a long time. Yeah, they're definitely doing the job that they need to do. As I said though, I mean, we are helping a lot of people. We're trying to keep building, and it is something like the Unity Shop does need to be in other areas as well. You know, if anybody ever wanted to come in and see what we're doing here, they'd be more than welcome to come along on a Friday and just see how chaotic it comes. But amongst all the chaos, it becomes the calm, and everything's back down to a normal stage. We're not all like headless chickens, which is normally me first thing on a Friday morning.
As far as that goes, if people, as Pauline said, we really could do with Unity shops in every town. And as far as that goes, part of what Ken was doing right at the start of this is to set up a fantastic website, which is unityshop.co.uk. And there's templates on there for how to actually build one. You know, there's actually, I think there's a video, is there stuff like that?
Oh, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, because we were locked down, what I basically did was built website. It's on the cheap though, so you need www.unityshop.co.uk. But you'll get a bit of an idea as how we started organising, because I essentially sat down first and started writing loads of blagging letters, printed hundreds of them, gave loads to Joyce, gave loads to Tony, gave loads to, and I'd say I spent quite a lot on stamps, but pretty much we sat here almost in the phone book, right? And the thing is, just have to swallow your pride and remember, you don't ask, you don't get. So we were literally walking into shops and saying, this is who we are. Will you give us some stuff? Will you give us that? And we were writing to everybody. We were writing to head teachers of schools to say, right, when you get to summer and all your surplus from your canteens, will you send it us? We were writing to all the trade union branches, you know, and we didn't always say financial, because a lot of the time there's a bit of bureaucracy and, you know, to kind of agree monetary donations. But say, for example, was it Unite, local Unite branch? It was too much of a pain in the ass to sign off donations. But then what they could do was buy us bikes, you know, and that's the same from. It's just being open about, you know, not needing it all to be money. You know,
at one time we was actually picketing outside Asda whilst demanding that they give us food for their low-paid workers. You know, so if that want to, you know,
aye. I mean, it genuinely was. So you go on the site, you'll see I apologise, they're a wee bit out of date, but you can steal whatever you like. But you know, I wrote a handful of letters, kind of pre-made, aimed at shop owners, aimed at business owners, all sorts, and just armed everybody that I knew with these, so they could just walk in places and give them a letter, explain who they were, and say, can you help us? And we sent out to all union branches as well and stuff. And to be fair, the huge chunk of donations we got at the start, we attended, put out requests to be invited to union branch meetings. And I think at the start, we got huge initial donations from our local Unite branch, Unison, as well, National Education Union, RMT, Musicians Union. We literally went through the phone book and said, right, if we don't ask people for stuff, we definitely ain't going to get anything. And, for the most part, even random stuff like there's a burger van outside B&Q, right? And a single self-employed lone trader is then sending us boxes of burgers and hot dogs and stuff like that. And that, and he was proud as you like. He's got a Unity Shop certificate stuck on his van, and that's still there today. And I say don't underestimate people's generosity. It's people do, and we've actually had more out of smaller local traders than we have out of big national places. Yeah. Because there's not the bureaucracy, and there's that link to the actual community. Rather than talking to some bloke in a suit at Asda corporate headquarters, we're walking into a shop on the road down there and going, can you help us out? And that was the same again. The Kurdish community, who are all based around where we initially started, were massively, massively helpful. People turning up with sacks of potatoes and all sorts, because they're all shop owners, And
well, one of the main things we got involved in early as well was period poverty. We had meetings with, me and Ken went to the meeting with the local councillors and that right at the beginning, and we didn't have a clue, did we?
No.
It was but good came of it, because we've been supplied with sanitary products from day one, really. So that there's nobody we deliver to going, well, on that side of things.
Yeah. So I think we'll shut up at this end and pass back over to Pete, and hopefully he'll be able to give you a bit of a heads up on how you can donate to We Shall Overcome. At Pauline's end, at this end, if you go on the Unity Shop website, you can set up a direct debit and you can give a little bit every month to help support the work here, or just share the link about, or use the templates and try and set something up locally. And anything that sort of spreads the word. We don't care what you call it. We're not trying to empire build. Just if you can set up your own thing in your own town to do your own thing, and you need that little nudge to get started, everything's on the website that Ken set up. It's a fantastic resource if you are into that sort of thing, and I hope you will be. I'll pass you back over to Pete, because we've gassed enough in all.
I've been listening to you lot all day. There was a couple of things I meant to mention earlier which slipped my mind. First of all, mentioning Steve Nevard, who puts together a lot of merchandise at cost and was responsible for the fundraising during COVID. I know some of the people in the room are in Devon, so he's based out of Tiverton, and he has a shop called Reloaded T-shirts, which is really struggling. So if you're looking for a bespoke T-shirt to get made, or various different, band T-shirts, popular culture reference T-shirts, stickers, badges, all different sorts of clothing, it'd be really good if you could pop in and support him. He's on Tiverton High Street by the church. But that's called Reloaded T-shirts. He's still got We Shall Overcome merchandise online, and one of the things he set up was a print-on-demand T-shirt service to support local musicians as well, which was a really good thing to do. Okay, that was the first thing I meant to mention. Second thing I meant to mention slipped my brain. Oh yeah, so I was talking about how there's a variety of different things happening underneath the We Shall Overcome, under the We Shall Overcome umbrella. I just give you a personal story I had. Is we in Nottingham, one of the things we try and do is organise an event in the homeless shelter centre itself. It's got a canteen, it's got benefits advocacy bit, it's got all sorts of things. People go for a shower, they can get on the internet, because obviously you need to have a phone or access. You have to have access to the internet to do a lot of claim forms and so on. And it's an absolutely incredible space. So we organise a day of music there, and it's organised in a circle, so there's no sense of performer and audience. Oh, hello, Connie. And it's like an open mic space in a way. And the people that use the centre, not just the staff and the volunteers, but the people who come in for their food, can actually take part, not just as audience, but also as performers as well. And oh God, absolutely amazing. Some of the emotions on those days are phenomenal. But one lass bought in a carrier bag full of socks that she'd got from the pound shop, and I think she'd probably spent a tenner on them. But she came in and she said, "I want you to give this message to people: is you wear 2 pairs of socks and a carrier bag between them." Because I was there. And I learned that a carrier bag is the difference between keeping your toes and losing your toes. And this was October, just before, as the weather was taking a turn. And that tenner from her was worth, I don't know, £1,000 from somebody else who's like ridiculously comfortably off. And it's just those small gestures of solidarity, I think, are absolutely incredible. One of the things often levelled at us is that we're not political, is that we're just a sticking plaster, that we're doing the government's work for them. But when you meet people who are still alive because of what people like Pauline do, you realise that part of the fight back is actually keeping people going. Before We Shall Overcome started, I switched from doing fundraisers for DPAC, Disabled People Against the Cuts, to actually learning how to be an advocate for people who'd been told by Atos that they were well enough to work, even though they had pacemakers and so on. And it's there where you actually see the need and what gestures of kindness, gestures of solidarity, what Pauline calls, love, really makes a difference, and why that in itself is massively political as well. If people do want to donate to what Pauline's doing here in Ashton, I'll put the link in the chat. But do keep an eye out locally. We get events happening all up and down the country, all different types of events. Some small, some large, some organised well in advance, some organised like short notice in demand. We did one in Nottingham because the Women's Centre had some funding cut short notice, and they really needed a short cash injection to fix the boiler. So yeah, do keep an eye out. We've got a Facebook page, which is, if you Google I think it's called We Shall Overcome. I can't remember I'll find a Facebook link and put it in the chat as well. And Joe, before we hand over for people to ask us questions, I've seen you explain at gigs why We Shall Overcome is such a powerful turn of words for what's happening. Am I putting you on the spot
right.
now?
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of putting me on the spot, because I ain't got gig momentum behind me at the moment. I've just got these three whispering in the background. But but yeah, you're quite right. If that was levelled at us about doing the government's job for them, that by the sort of by ideological people on the left, I really object to that. What if you're going to allow your ideology to let people go hungry, I fail to see the difference between you and the Tories. That it's just bollocks. You're part of the same problem. What we're doing is keeping enough people alive to dance on their fucking graves. Sorry, that's my F word for the thing. Yeah. So yeah, what we shall overcome. I always think that it was associated with the civil rights movement in the 60s in the USA, and it become associated with this kind of like liberal whimsy. And I always say, no, that's not true. It's not liberal whimsy. It's not this kind of dream about what might happen in this ideal world. The emphasis is on the second word. We shall overcome is not this kind of gentle thing. It's a threat. And that's what I associate with it. I think I find it a lot more invigorating that way. It's not some passive thing. The shall makes it an active. It means that you're a part of the change. And that's essentially what every single person who has been associated with it over the years, every single person who's rocked up at a gig with a bag full of shopping, or performed for us, or organised, or designed a poster, or volunteered at Pauline's, or turns out here every weekend to deliver parcels, or puts a box in the school. All of these people are equally as important as the next person. This is what socialism looks like, and it's a beautiful thing. And I am so proud to know every single person involved in it, and I am so proud to be a part of it. And I just want to thank Rebecca for the opportunity to speak about it, and for all of you lot joining in and listening. And I'll pass you back over to Rebecca, and I think that's enough from us.
Wow. Well, yeah, such a lot of amazing stuff to take on board there. Like, even knowing quite a bit about what you do, I think it's amazing to get these different voices of people involved, speaking about it kind of from where you're working as well, and and reflecting on the history of it and how that's relevant now. It's extraordinary, and a lot to take in. And I'm so glad we're filming it as well, so we can like look back at this and think about what to do with it, and share it more, because I think like what you're doing is also giving such a lot of great practical ideas for people who want to be active, and maybe it's just missing that template, or missing that link, or missing that conversation. So yeah, I don't know what Pete and Joe and everybody want to do. Shall we just open it to questions? I'm sure people that have joined as participants may have their own reflections, or thoughts or questions that they want to ask. Shall I do that? Open it up to the floor?
Please do, Rebecca. Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Great. Okay. Well, everybody that's here, just have a think about what you might want to ask, what you might want to reflect on in terms of what you've heard. You can raise your hand. Just sort of hang on. I'm going to change my view here so I can actually see everybody. Wait a second. So you can raise your hand like digitally, or actually, or turn your camera on, or shout out, or do whatever you want to do, really. I don't think there's not a strict method here. Chris?
Yeah, this has been really great. I guess I had a question about like the gigs and the performances and that kind of part of it, and I think you were saying about doing some events in different spaces and that kind of thing, and I guess with like some other forms of activism, they have this kind of like creative activism of like making art more accessible, because there's a lot of elitism and keeping people out of the arts as well, of like, oh, only certain people can get up and perform and do that kind of thing. I've done that thing where I don't have a specific question, but I just wondered if you could say a bit more about like that, the performance side of it, and the ways in which that is kind of opening up performing and making art together, and making that more accessible to people in the community as well.
I think from what we're finding here is as well that people really, it's kind of a bit of a win-win, because we've got young bands and people who want to come out and gig and want to come out and gain experience. And a lot of the people who come and play for us play for nothing, but we do also make sure that bands aren't out of pocket, so we pay expenses. You know, we'll sort some beer out. But I think, watching some of the young bands coming in and play and feeling a sense of purpose about being involved in it, it's their way of, when they maybe don't know another way of helping. So it's massive for that, but it's as well, it's supporting local live groups, you know, grassroots live music, and giving people somewhere to play as well, which I think possibly wasn't one of the initial driving forces behind WSO, but has become one. You know, we've had people go out and busk and do busks for the homeless. But as well, we've got quite a lot of people that haven't had the confidence to go and gig, and because there are open mic nights or events that are specifically accepting of people at all levels of music. You know, we had an incredible lady here last night. By day, she's a social worker and works with some incredibly vulnerable families. She came and did her first ever gig for us last night I mean, it's only small spaces, but to a relatively packed pub, supporting Jess Silk, who is just phenomenal. And, you know, she was just so happy to be involved and to be able to perform her own music. You know, it's original music. If we don't protect that as well, that's such a loss. And it's vital that people are respecting the musicians. Without them, we wouldn't exist. But it's as well, there are less and less places for people to gig. But you can be creative with it. We've had people that have done it in church halls. We've had people that have gigged in their own front rooms and had house parties. So there's no kind of boundaries to creativity. And I think that inclusivity of WSO is so important for us as a movement, because that does keep our lifeblood. But it is a win-win, because it's giving people a chance to express themselves and to pay it forward with their own art as well. And that us respecting that and valuing that and recognising that is crucial for the future of independent music. You know, there are very few people who are going to make it big in music, because it's just everything's stacked against them. And it's incredibly difficult to make a living as a musician. But it doesn't mean that you can't get out there and be part of a community and be valued for it. And I think that is something that we kind of give back as well as receiving. It's almost symbiotic.
One of the other guys who's been heavily involved with We Shall Overcome right from the beginning, playing goodness knows how many gigs, is called Matt Hill. So I recommend you look up Matt Hill, songwriter, formerly known as Quiet Loner. But he runs, I don't know if he's back doing it, but he ran a lot of art making workshops here in the pub, music, poetry, storytelling, and art that's drawing.
Creative writing as well. And he also goes into prisons and works in a rehabilitation format there. But he's done an incredible piece of work with the Booth Centre in Manchester, which is a very, very important homeless project that genuinely saves lives every day. And from working with the homeless people in there and giving them the chance to express themselves as songwriters and creative writers, they produced a book, which meant that they were all, you know, just imagine that it's a bunch of homeless people that people normally spit on or look the other way from, and suddenly they are published artists in their own right, and they've paid it forward by doing that to help fund the community, you know, the community that they rely on. So it's an incredibly empowering thing if we can facilitate that. But Matt is just absolutely inspirational. He even does a My First Protest song group for toddlers, getting kiddies to get involved with a bit of Bob Dylan and what have you. So he's just a phenomenal guy. And Pete's right, definitely look Matt up. He's playing for us there tonight with Joe and Attila.
Yeah, Joe.
Chris, I thank you for raising this, because it's encompasses something that I forgot to mention. That one of the best things about We Shall Overcome is its versatility on the ground. So it's not just been musicians that's been supplied. We've had poetry nights, we've had bake-offs, we've had burlesque nights, we've had snooker tournaments, we've had history walks. We've you name it, people have done it. Board game competitions, you know, just people just wanted to get involved. It straddled right away across anything that anybody can use to make a little bit of money and raise a bit of help and be involved in it and feel a part of it. That they have done. They make me smile every year with what with the inventiveness of what they're doing out there, and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, it's crucial that we support live music. It's crucial that we support young musicians coming through. But people's imagination when it comes to supporting communities and being a part of what's going on is a really wonderful thing to behold. So thank you, Chris, for raising this, because that point, and it's crucial, might have slipped past otherwise. So thank you.
I think there's stuff. I think there's something about doing stuff together, both in a room with other people, but also together in that sense of meeting a community of people or family, who you got shared purpose with. That is actually, for me anyway, with my own mental health issues, it's been amazing for me to meet so many people and to know there are other people out there who feel the same kind of feel the struggle, and to meet people.
And I think things as well, people find ways who maybe are not naturally creative to be involved. I mean, we do a sponsored winter rough sleep the first Saturday in December every year, and basically we end up with people all around the country, either in their gardens, in one case up a mountain, another case on the flat balcony, and a lot of people in our car park here in tents, being rough sleepers for a night. And that's in no way trying to say that experience is the same as somebody having to live on the street, but it's a real eye-opener when you actually have to experience it, just how long a winter night is and what these people have to endure and survive every day. But it also makes it really accessible, because I can't sing. I can if I want to empty the pub. But people that can't be creative in a way that you would think naturally is being creative, coming and getting involved in something like that. Or we've got To the Moon and Back, an inspirational lady called Emma, who's it was started by Joe, but Emma's taken it and run with it. I mean, she's a stroke survivor. She has limited mobility and is quite disabled herself. She's not letting it beat her, and she's sort of spearheading this whole thing of walking enough miles to get to the moon and back as a sponsored walk for WSO. And that, again, it's a group where it kind of batters down the isolation a bit, because people are putting their miles on there when they've just walked to the shop or taken the kids to school or walked the dog. Other people who are going and rambling and walking miles. But it doesn't matter whether you walk a metre or a mile, it's just as valuable to the overall total. And everybody's on that group sharing photos of where they've been and a tree turning colours or their pet dog, or, what they've been and done. And it just links us. It's all about, as much as anything else, us being a big family and being a big family for the people we support. So when we do the rough sleep in December, some of the guys that were rough sleepers themselves that we've helped to house and that we supported when they were hungry, they're coming back. They haven't got anybody to sponsor them, because we're the only family they've got. But it doesn't matter whether they raise any sponsorship. It matters that they're here and they're part of it. And in their way, they're doing that in solidarity with the people who are still out there. So everybody owns this. It's not, like Joe said, it's not Joe, Pete, me, Matt. It's everybody who wants to get involved. Lindsay Rutland with Wool Shall Overcome. We can't forget that. She's got a mum who isn't very well, is knitting stuffed toys. That's pensioners getting involved with picking up the knitting needles and getting involved. And again, they feel a sense of purpose and a sense of involvement. And at the same time, they're helping people. Everybody can do something, even if it's just a kind word on a bad day for someone. You can change the world. But it's when you kind of accept that it's in your hands to make those changes. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Get stuck in. I think sometimes you feel so battered down by watching what's on the news and with all the despair that there is. And don't get me wrong, I would love one single day in my life, and I say so often, where I don't end up crying. We deal with some really, really heartbreaking and bleak situations, but as well, some of the most uplifting and absolutely incredible ones, just by changing somebody's day. Somebody that spotting that somebody's made a bit of an effort with their hair or whatever. You're homeless and you're coming here for food. you don't get a lot of compliments, but if you genuinely notice something about somebody and just a bit of positivity in this whole sea of shit that's going on at the minute, makes a difference. So yeah, the musicians, the poets, they're all massively important to us, but the main thing for me with WSO is you don't have to have some wonderful innate talent. You can just be yourself and find a way by being yourself of making a difference, if that makes sense. Yeah, I love you.
Yeah, makes total sense. Something I was thinking when you were talking then is how, and what something Pete said as well, is how like activism or like being politically involved in your community can often feel like something additional to your job or additional to your other responsibilities, and it can be very tiring, and like we all know burnout probably, but actually this idea that is also a very uplifting thing. And then the way that We Shall Overcome seems to have created such a caring community for everybody that's involved is just so interesting, so heartening as well, like that actually what might help our mental health or our health in other ways is being a part of this thing and looking out for each other, as well as it being something that we have to work at and something that we have to do. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. But has anyone else got any questions, responses? I'm sure there are. Clara and Gustavo, I should say.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience. I was wondering if beyond the local and national articulation and connection and community connection, that's wonderful, as Rebecca also highlighted, if you already thought or try about any international support, any international connection, like with other movements or social movements that is also working in this kind of struggle. Maybe just wondering if you could say a little bit about that. Thank you so much.
Is something I better pick up on this? Is it, Pete?
Go on then, Joe.
Thank you for your question. Thank you very much. We initially started out wanting to spread it as far and wide as we could because we didn't when it first kicked off and this phone's vibrating like mad and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We did have gigs in France and in the States and in Ireland and we felt like we didn't have the network of contacts in order to spread that. So as time went on, we kind of shrunk back into the UK a little bit, purely because we didn't have the reach. But international problem as capitalism begins to fail, and I think everybody can agree that that is happening. As capitalism falls back on itself, working people are getting left behind. That's causing situations that are driving governments to the right and then the left into the liberal ground in the middle, trying to defend a status quo that's failing. And the main victims of this capitalism in crisis, in collapse, whatever part of it we're actually in, the main victims of that are working people right away across the globe. And the more, so the less societal infrastructure there is, the harder that is on communities. Now, our experiences are really only the experiences of our reach. They're the experiences within a Western neoliberal economy, and the associated infrastructure. So we're able to work within the constructs that are available to us and work between these constructs in order to keep things going. Internationally, our experience is limited, but it'd be wonderful to hook up and share notes and thoughts, and we'll help in any way we can, and maybe we can learn some things from yourselves. I think that's a vital thing, because if we start thinking of the political situation only being locked within a nation state here and a nation state there, I think we're missing a vital point about what's actually happening globally to capitalism, and it would be really good to hook up, I think. So to answer your question, we don't have that as yet, but we're quite happy to engage and to learn and to pass on what ideas we do have. So thank you.
I mean, just as a kind of corollary of that, but intimately related, is Pauline's mentioned it, and the guys in Hull have mentioned it as well, is We Shall Overcome also does what it can to support local refugee support networks. So it's hyper local in terms of the events that happen, but it's not that kind of hyper local where we only help some people, but not, you know what I mean? And back right at the beginning of We Shall Overcome, we had some people who still do. A guy called Lewis Burner in Leeds, who still takes his guitar out and he sings at soup kitchens. You know, people who are providing the food on the streets. He'll get a sing along going to help people warm up and stuff. You know, to temperature wise warm up. And that's great. But back in 2015, I knew a few people who were involved in We Shall Overcome who'd, rally together and get a van load of donations to take over to Calais, or one guy who went all the way down to Macedonia, I think. But they take their instruments with them as well. So that kind of spirit of the artistry of music or the artistry of poetry, as well as that kind of raised fist and helping hand, that kind of spirit translated over as well. Yeah. I'm going to mute myself again because there's some background noise going on. Unless you wanted to come in, Pauline.
I was going to actually apologise for the background noise. We normally have 0 customers till about 2 o'clock on a Saturday, and this week we've got some of my noisiest customers ever have all come in at the same time. So apologies for the background noise here.
Can I ask you something about that? It's completely unrelated, but you used the word customers. I'm kind of trained because my sister's in social work and so on to say service user. But I love the customers. You also say guys, people's names. It's really important, isn't it?
I think the impact of, and I don't call, the customers are the piss cans I've got at the bar who are drinking this early.
Oh, it's
but yes, the customers, we don't have customers at the door. I always call them our lads and lasses, because I loathe the term service users. And I'm not a big fan of clients or other labels. They're my boys and girls. Somebody asked me last week how many kids I've got, and I said, about 120, but it does vary from day to day, because they're human beings, and I'm not a big fan of the whole labels thing that we do. And I think that is really important as well, going back to something that Ken said about referrals and making it accessible. And I think, yes, you do occasionally get somebody that is taking the mick, but my answer to that has always been, if 2 people out of the 140 people that we fed 2 days ago at this door didn't actually need it and were taking advantage of it, I would rather feed those 2, in air quotes, unnecessarily than not be accessible to the 138 people who did need to be here. And I think hungry's hungry. I don't actually think that you should be made to be a performing seal to access food and compassion. So again, it's just I know that the names change. I mean, we're doing a piece of work with social services around what were classed as being, I think they were originally called foster kids and care leavers, and then they were called looked after children. Now they're called cared for children. It's basically 415 care leavers who have virtually nobody at Christmas, and we're trying to put some stuff together to make sure that they don't fall through the net, because nobody looks at that group of people. But at the end of the day, every one of those, whatever label they want to put on them, is a young person who's facing Christmas on their own. So quite frankly, I don't care what they call them. As far as I'm concerned, they're now family because we've been told there's a need. As soon as you need us, you become our family. And we're a bit like toe fungus. We're quite hard to get rid of. So once you've got us, you're stuck with us. Which, you know, so yeah, they're my lads and lasses at the door. Knowing their names really matters. And I've been asked, is it appropriate when I hug people? And I was asked, is it appropriate because somebody coming and doing a donation heard me say to somebody, I love you. And the answer to that was, it would only be inappropriate if I wasn't telling the truth. So I love the people who come here. That's why I do it. I don't do it for any financial gain. I'm not salaried for doing this. I don't take anything out of the pot for myself. I never would do. And I think that also makes a huge difference. People know that WSO isn't some big funded charity that's, you know, got people driving around in BMWs and Mercs and drawing large salaries. We are normal, ordinary, working class people who just give a shit. And that makes us more accessible because people feel more comfortable coming to us because they know that the motivation is that we care. It's that, again, if that makes sense, you know, we're doing it because we want to, as well as the fact that we're needed, because it's, I got told off this, it's not the right thing to do, it's the left thing to do. So yeah, that's why we get up and do this every day, and I'll continue to do it as long as I possibly can.
So just to clarify, customers are the people in the pub buying the beer, and it's the pub that keeps Pauline going. So if you're ever up in the northwest, come and find this pub, the Station Hotel in Ashton Under Lyne. It's a community hub. It's doing all of this fantastic stuff to help people, but it's also a working pub that needs punters.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And you got cracking gigs as well.
Yeah, and just to say, I was lucky enough to get a little tour earlier from Pete when we got online just a bit before the workshop started, and it's a beautiful pub. Beautiful pub. And there's also, while we're doing this workshop, 180, I was told there was only 180 food packages that were ready to go out today. I mean, it's just extraordinary what's going on in this one building. Francesco's got his hand up.
It's actually not very simple question. Do you have, or have you had anything going on in Leicester? Like Midlands, as a geographical area? The reason why I'm asking is that I also work with United Community here in the East Midlands, and there are quite a few campaigns that would definitely speak to the stuff you've been involved with, and where the kind of stuff you've been doing would be very beneficial for as a way of tackling issues. We have one, for instance, on access to benefits, and one thing on food banks as well. So I was wondering if you already had some contacts here in this region, or if you would, you know, be interested in generally doing stuff in the future here.
Yeah, I can answer that one because I live in Nottingham, and I work at Loughborough. So and I know quite a few people in Leicester. We have had quite a lot of events in Leicester. Not in the last couple of years. There's a choir based in Leicester that often go out and like invade shopping centres or street corners and start singing and shaking the bucket. And I think they do it for is it called Leicester Help the Homeless, that organisation? There's been quite a few gigs over the years. So I could if you contact me off this, we could, or if Rebecca introduces us or shares our emails, I can link you up with the people I do know in Leicester. But that speaks to another issue about how do people do an event if they want. And one of the things I've found is the people who've come later to We Shall Overcome in the last couple of years have said, I really want to help. How? And you know, some people are really happy to volunteer their art to perform. Other people are try, God bless everybody, stick a bit of money in the bucket, or donate raffle prizes or something. But some of the people who I've seen totally transformed as individuals have actually thrown themselves in, and they've gone to a venue, maybe their local pub or a cafe if they want a non-alcoholic venue or something, and just said, look, I've got this idea about doing a fundraiser to raise a bit of money for the local homeless outreach group or the soup kitchen, or the food larder or something. If you provide the space, I'll provide you some customers, and that works out as a perfect balance because the venue is getting customers. Venues are struggling after COVID. People are getting to meet other like-minded people, and even if you just get like 50 quid for a 50 quid in raffle tickets or something, or less than that, or more than that, that starts to build something. And so somebody I know, that's exactly what they did in their local cafe, and they're now organising 400 capacity music events. It's crazy. It becomes a bit addictive after a while. So it is possible if you've identified a cause that needs a bit of help, to try and build something fresh locally, and get in touch. Can talk you through how we've done it in various different venues. We've also got a big network of musicians who just want to come and contribute as much as they can.
We do. There's a group on Facebook. We Shall Overcome has a group that anybody can join, and then people go on, and you'll get people saying, "I'm a musician in such an area. I'd love to come and play. Has anybody got any gigs going?" Or if people are putting events up, saying, "Can anybody come and support this event?" And we all share each other's events as well. And there's quite a lot of resources on there, just from the people that are already doing this, that maybe a little more experience at it, who can give advice, and I think that sort of support, again, that makes what we do a little bit different, in that nobody's competing, we're all working side by side. That's the point. We all support each other. So anybody who wants to get involved can join that group and then ask for help to promote a gig, ask if anybody's available to play, and ask for it to be shared, and we've got, I think it's about 4,500 members in there, who will then share any events that are local to them, and word of mouth it to their mates as well, to try and build up a little bit of support. So it's very much everybody's welcome to get involved and use. We Shall Overcome doesn't belong to anybody, it belongs to all of us. So anybody can use that banner to raise funds or awareness. And as Pete said, it can be 20 quid, it can be 2 quid, it can be Glossop Labour Club quite frequently do events to support Glossopdale Food Bank. And the admission is that you bring a can of food with you. And that's how they're doing it. They're physically collecting tins of meals that will then go into somebody's belly. So again, rather than asking people to hand over money, to say, bring a bag of beans.
Can I just zip in here? We're really struggling for connectivity now. We keep losing you, so we might have to sign off from the Unity shop end. But thank you so much for setting this up, Rebecca, and thanks to everybody for coming in with your questions. I'm sorry to have to duck out, but the tech's letting us down.
No worries, Joe, and everyone with you there. Thank you so much for all your I can see you again now for a last wave. Thanks so much for everything. Just really appreciate your time, and I hope this has felt like interesting and useful for you. I think it certainly is for everyone that's come along and to learn more about We Shall Overcome. Thank you, and I'll be in touch probably right after this session. I'll be emailing you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone. We'll sign off at this end. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Joe, Ken, Co, Joyce, Co. Yeah. Okay. So that Pauline's answer there brought to mind the amazingness of kind of how organically We Shall Overcome grew in the first place. It was like back before Facebook became dominated by algorithms and decided that you didn't want to see certain amounts of content. It was just a group, and somebody in Leeds, for instance, says, "I'm up for doing an event." And somebody else in Leeds says, "Oh yeah, I'll join you." And you had events combining, heavy metal with I don't know, folk and storytelling. It was great for being cross eclectic, and people got to know each other. And then, you know, I think down in the southwest, there are a group of people in Bridport, Yeovil, Crewkerne, and Dorchester who knew each other anyway, but they decided to organise a little tour where they all supported each other. So they went around to Cupboard Love Food Hub in Bridport. Is, you know, there's regular events down in the southwest for them, and so on. What was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, but as a result of that, one of the things that we were able to do was introduce people in different parts of the country. So they organised the We Shall a kind of tour. So if a band up in Newcastle is looking for a venue down in, I don't know, London or the southwest or Swansea or something, they'll say, well, okay, we'll support you in Newcastle, and then you support us in Swansea. And it's kind of like creates little gig triangles. So it's worked out to the benefit of those artists as well, because they can introduce their music to new audiences that they wouldn't otherwise have had. And it's, you know, and a lot of music I find needs to be heard live, and singing along collectively really gets you in the guts, doesn't it? Yeah. Before, I mean, now Joe's gone as well. Do check out Joe's website, and he's up to that 5,000 capacity limit on Facebook, so I don't think he can take any more Facebook friends. But he does a lot of political reflections and stuff, and it's always worth reading, I think, particularly because he puts class back into contemporary political analysis.
Yeah, I'm just putting his website in the chat. I think that's the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the key points, I think, actually, Pete, when you, Joe, Chris, and I initially talked about this this session, was about the importance of class and how that's often something that isn't necessarily addressed directly, and the relationship of We Shall Overcome with class, and like being run by working class communities, basically for working class communities. I think I just think this, again, it's really important to spread awareness that this stuff is happening, because it doesn't have much of a platform. You know.
Yeah. I tell you, there's something else that springs to mind. What Pauline mentioned and what somebody at Hull said earlier as well is a lot of the formal food banks operate on a referral service. So you're only allowed a certain amount of parcels per time period, and you need to have a referral from a GP, a social services, the school, or something like that, and you're only allowed a maximum amount. That's horrific, because for some people the need is every day, not every 3 months or something. But the other thing, which is where this is related, I think, is when the government brought in, they brought in an act a while ago, but it effectively prevented charities from explaining why they needed to exist. So if a charity could be perceived to be expressing a particular political opinion, yeah, they were at threat of losing their charitable status. I can't remember the exact legislation, but it's the same reason why you don't see so many petitions online being asked to sign for I can't remember the name of it. But what We Shall Overcome can do is be an external political voice for the food bank, if it needs an external political voice. So we have got some people who do work for the local trust and trust, for instance, which is a referral-based food bank. But the volunteers that work there are amazing human beings, but they can't go out publicly and say how terrible everything is and why everything's terrible. And that's one of the things that We Shall Overcome can do, is it can explain why there's so much poverty, why there's so much hunger, why there's so much need, without fear of losing our charity status, because we don't have charity status. Every time we raise money, we try and raise it locally, and we invite the local causes along to be part of the event we're doing. I mean, places like the station here and the whole Unity shop are in a way exceptions to the rule because they're physical bases. But most gigs and events are in cafes, pubs, and then you've raised a bucket load of cash or something. We asked the local groups to come along and be part of what we're doing, to help explain why what they do is important, but to also give them a space that's outside of the formal rules of the Charity Commission to talk about things as they are in real life.
I think as well, I mean, people sometimes ask me, why don't we register as a charity because we could access more funding? And it's very much partly what Peter's just said. Because as soon as you register as a charity, you have to be apolitical, largely, and if you don't, there are penalties and you can lose that status. It does raise the issues of transparency. So, I mean, I personally use Facebook as my transparency. And we do have somebody audits on my receipts and what have you, who actually was a fraud investigator for HMRC for his professional career. So, you know, we keep all that transparent. But I think the thing is as well, because the station is a little bit different because we've got a physical base here. But the fact that by and large WSO is supporting other places and other people who are doing what they're doing. So Rachel Emmett, who is an inspirational lady at Mesopotamia in Nottingham, WSO in Nottingham will support Mesopotamia. Robin Murray does a lot of work in North Wales, and he's supporting specific community places. So we don't necessarily need to be gagged by becoming charitable, because quite often the money that's raised is going to charities. But as Pete said, I think it's just really important that a lot of people want to silence what is actually going on and why we're facing what we're facing. If you look at mainstream media, you know, you look at a lot of the stuff that's going on Facebook and on social media at the minute. We're living in a world where people are actively perpetuating hate and blame to try and deflect from what's really going on. So I get trolled quite a lot. I do get quite a lot of stick from the right wing, but thankfully I've got a big gob and broad shoulders, so it don't really make much difference. But I think that's one of the other things that's massively important that maybe we've not said with WSO, is that we are multicultural, multi-faith, multi-everything, and we're just open and accepting. So today I've got 100 odd people who are coming to my door, as we do every day. They're getting a hot meal today that's been provided by a Muslim ladies group. Every day we provide halal and kosher food, vegetarian food as well. And I know Whole Unity are very actively doing the same thing. You know, we respect people's moral, ethical and faith needs in a dietary way as well. But nobody's publicising that. You know, everybody's at the minute, all this influx and this invasion of immigrants coming over the channel on small boats and what they're doing to the world. And what they're not seeing is that right across Britain, people of every faith, creed and colour are coming together and trying to help. And we need to be celebrating that, and we need to be getting that message out there. That, you know, I have Action for Humanity who come and are providing over the winter hot meals 2 days a week. We have the Jane Community Centre who are providing phenomenal vegetarian food. And normally if I say veggie curry to my lads at the door, it's, what's that? But if I give them that, they'll absolutely love it. It's, you know, it's incredible, hot, tasty food. We have the Hindu temple that supports us on a monthly basis. Everybody is getting involved, and it's, you know, we need to be breaking barriers down and not putting them up. And I think that's a vital part of what WSO does, is say, you know what, instead of going out there and looking at the negatives and buying into that hatred, go out there and celebrate what we're all doing as a community, and we are all part of the community. And you know, and I think that particularly, I mean, it's been Hate Crime Awareness Week. We're seeing a spike in it, and I don't know what people who are watching this are seeing, but you know, there is an awful lot of hatred out there at the moment, and the only way to beat hatred is by giving out love instead. You know, because it's not going to go away; it's going to get worse. because people are desperate, people are scared, and they're looking for people to blame. And you've got, unfortunately, members of our elected government perpetuating that hatred. So, of course, unfortunately, people who pick up the Daily Mail or the Express or, are reading these words coming from government ministers' mouths and believing them. And it's bollocks. We know that, you know that, and a lot of the people that we're working side by side with know that. But it's given credence and validity because some idiot in Westminster is lying and doing so to hide the shortcomings that with our own government is making people die out there. So we can beat it, but we've got to stand together to beat it. And that's what WSO is. It's solidarity and not taking what people say at face value, getting the truth out there. So that's me on my political soapbox for a moment.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so important about the openness that you've described so well about WSO, is that I think people in isolation get more scared and get more, more susceptible. Perhaps it's more susceptible, they're more susceptible to the news or whatever, but to actually just be with people, meet people, it helps us enormously feel positive and kind of get our feet back on the ground, Sorry, Mum. Barbara. Yeah. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I wanted to say that I work in a food bank in a Tory area. We do have a referral system, but we never ever turn anyone away. And it's actually very well run in that somebody takes the order, whoever rings up. People can be referred from head teachers. We often get a referral that day because the children have gone in hungry. And we pack their food. We pack food for single people for 3 days. Sufficient for 3 days. For families of 2 up to 6 or more. So they're given a certain amount of, and it's quite carefully done. We also give fresh food if we can, if they come and collect it, but we also deliver a lot of food, but obviously we can't give fresh food. And we also have clients, we call them clients, but we call them by their Christian names when we speak to them. We have an area where they come and they can have a cup of tea, a biscuit, and then there's a section where they can actually choose items to add to their order. So we also very carefully ask how old their children are and try to give, according to the child, the age of the child and the sex of the child. Perhaps a teenage girl might need sanitary items or something like that. I really think what you do is wonderful. I don't think there's anything like that in Malvern, but we've got a very busy food bank and we get a lot of donations. And this Christmas, for the second time, I'm singing in Malvern Priory on the 28th of December. Whoever comes, and I'm already advertising that, in aid of the food bank for the second year running, because we realise how desperate people are. And there's more and more people coming. We also get homeless people coming, but there is somewhere for the homeless people to be accommodated in Malvern. So I just want to let you know that the food bank is a really important place in Malvern.
I think what you're doing is incredible, and I think we work closely with the food banks locally here, and they're very much, as you say, that they're trying not to turn people away. I know it puts a lot of pressure on you as volunteers as well, because the stories, it's so hard, isn't it? The stories, and when you see people coming in trouble, I think people need to recognise that volunteers in the, whether it's us on the front line or you as somebody in the food bank, You know, sometimes just a little bit of a thank you, and not, I don't mean from the people that we help, but I just think from maybe people who should be doing some of the stuff that we're having to do, who are taking for granted that we're going to fill those gaps. And I just want to say, as one volunteer to another, I love you and thank you, because you know, I know how hard it is, and you're an incredible lady.
Yeah.
And you should live stream your song. You should live stream your song.
Sorry?
You should live stream your singing as well, so we can all watch.
Well, I'll find out if they're recorded. It's Christmas carols we're singing, and the congregation join in for many of them. So it's a really lovely occasion, and we do it for local charities. But this year we decided that the food bank needed it most. But one other thing we have in our food bank, we have a little room where somebody from CIS comes, and if clients are having debt difficulties or need to learn how to organise their money, we help them as well. But they get sufficient food for 3 days, but if necessary, they can come again and get more food. It's not limited to 3 days. Yeah.
We're hearing sort of from different areas around the country, that some of the food banks, like the one that you're discussing in Melbourne, but some of the friends that I've got that are volunteers in food banks in other areas in the country are saying, you know, there's supposed to be 3 referrals in a 6-month period, but they're actually now struggling so much to keep the stocks up that they're having to, where they normally wouldn't have turned people away, they're having to say to people when they've come on the 5th or 6th time, you know, we can't do it this time. And that's what I'm saying about the toll that takes on, I think, on the volunteers that are having to deal with saying no as well. And that's something I think is quite often overlooked, that what this does, the level of need that we're all facing now on front lines. And I know I said it before, you know, I cry a lot. And it really does impact on your mental health. I think the message that, again, something that's really important with WSO, that we've got, that I would have gone under, but way before this. I'm nearly 10 years into doing this, but to this level, it's been since We Shall Overcome started in 2015. And absolutely, mentally and physically, I would have gone under by now if it hadn't been for the fact that I've got WSO as a family. And I do, honestly. Matt will pick up the phone and say, "Dickhead, what are you still doing online at this time?" Or Joe will message me and say, "Go to bed." And, you know, we all do watch out for each other, but I think it's really important, if you do get involved, and you do choose to get involved, there needs to be a little bit of self-care there as well, because it's heartbreaking. You know, it's really, really hard and heartbreaking when we're having to deal with what we're having to deal with and seeing the human cost firsthand. So just from a personal point of view, from me to each of you, as people who are interested enough to watch this on a Saturday afternoon, if you do get involved, please just remember, sometimes it's okay to be kind to yourself, and to talk to people. The fact that we're a network means that when we've had a loss, and, you know, I got to too many funerals, I'm up to next week. If I didn't have the network of people around me to help me get through those bereavements, because we lose a lot of people. I'm dealing with homeless people, they die a lot more and a lot younger than you would wish. If you choose to get involved, please look after yourselves as well, because you're not helping anybody if you put yourself under. You are helping the whole world if you can do it in a healthy and safe way. And whether it be that you come and do it under WSO banner and you have all of us with you, or whether you have a support network around you wherever you do it, just make sure you've got that support network, please, and stay safe.
Yeah, that's very, very crucial advice, and I think it's one it's quite hard learned as well at times. So take it from Pauline. If it hasn't happened to you that you've kind of gone under, then do practice the self-care always as best you can, and networks are so good for that. Pete's wandering through the pub there. Maybe
in the spirit of celebrating the volunteers, this is Emma, who's modelling also one of the items of clothing that Steve Nevard manufactured. That's the We Shall Overcome hoodie.
Oh, wonderful!
So we got Emma here. That's the food cupboard, and Logan's working there. I'm going to move now because obviously safeguarding issues. We don't want anybody on camera.
So
but yeah, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Rachel, who's around the corner.
Haven't kind of toured you through the pub is because there's a lot going on in the distribution room and the bar, and we're not really wanting to get anybody. Well, we shouldn't get anybody on camera, basically. Just all coming in for food, so that's why we've kept quite still.
Sorry, I stepped up while there was a lull in the queue, but as soon as I stepped up, somebody arrived, and obviously there's legal safeguarding issues, so you need consent before you put people on camera.
Yeah, exactly.
But
no, it's
yeah,
nice
I wanted to say thank you to Emma and Rachel and Logan as well, who are in here today, so Pauline can be with us.
Yeah, there's a whole hive of activity going on. More people around the corner.
Yeah, it never stops. It just never stops.
Well, we have come to the end of the time for this session, and I'm hoping that nobody had a really burning question that they wanted to ask. If there is anyone that really, really wants to ask something quite quick, now is your moment. Otherwise, I'll just watch your screens in case anybody puts their hands up or shouts out. But otherwise, I think we should draw to a close. And yeah, goodness, just heartfelt thanks for being here, especially on a Saturday. Amazing amount of learning and information that's been exchanged, I think. Thank you so much, Pete and Pauline. And yeah, it's wonderful to see you, and really amazing to see you, I think, also in you and Joe as well, in the places that you do all of this work that you're talking about. It somehow, even over Zoom, makes it that much more tangible for us to kind of get a handle on what you're doing and really envisage it, and think about the work that we do in our communities and what we can learn from you and your just incredible work. So I hope this has been a bit of a kind of good sharing platform and might be a way of amplifying what you're doing further in the coming weeks, months. I'll email you, Pete, in a minute probably, and Joe, and just don't feel the need to get back to me, obviously, but I'll just, while it's all on my mind, I'll probably email you and we can just be in touch about how to take it forwards. Okay. Lots of lovely messages here in the chat, and I'll also save the chat if that's all right with people.
Yeah.
It saves along with the video, and it's really nice to see where people
I'm not very good at Zoom, so I can see chat messages flash up, but I don't know how to read them.
So there's people are saying.
I do know how to read them. I don't know how to read them without not being able to see the screen.
You're an academic. You don't know how to read them. People are just saying thank you very much for sharing this wonderful work. Very inspiring. Thank you, everyone. One love. This was so great. Thank you for sharing. A raised fist from Fliff. Inspirational to know that so many people care, and people in the room are obviously, I can see, quite moved by what you've shared, and everything that we've talked about, which is sort of on the one hand extremely upsetting and on the other hand extremely heartening. So yeah, I really, really appreciate everybody coming along.
So a couple of last things from me is I think I saw that there are a couple of names in the room of people who've either organised events or helped organise events or been creative in ways of supporting. I think I saw Amanda was in the room.
Yeah.
So brilliant. Yeah. So huge thank you. It really is a nationwide family. So sorry I didn't necessarily get to flag everybody there. The other thing is, in terms of unions as well, the unity shop model is amazing. But one of the other way, and the direct donations as well, but a lot of trade unions also have arts and culture funds. And one of the events I organised, they couldn't do a direct donation, but what they could do is help with printing flyers, hiring venues, stuff like that. And the guy from Unison in Nottingham actually said, brilliant, we've been waiting for somebody to ask. So there's that as well. But thanks for tuning in, thanks for being interested. We shall overcome. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. We shall overcome. And just to chime in with what you just last said there, Pete, it's true. And my experience on Reading Trades Council firstly, and to an extent Exeter Trades Council too, it's like these organisations are like keen but don't necessarily have the like, it's good when people come to them with ideas about what they want to do in the community, put it that way, and then there might be some money or there might be some resources or someone might print your flyers for you or be able to help out in whatever way. So yeah, just to encourage you to ask trade union bodies as well as all the other people that we've kind of thought about. But yes, thank you.
And you can hear more about that. I've just seen Dave's in the room. Hi, Dave.
Yes, Dave Rogers.
Yeah, have Banner done their session yet, or is that to come up? So for people for whom this is their first event, make sure you tune in for whenever Banner Theatre lead the event as well, because they're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want us to do a gig for you, let us know. I'll see if I can get a team together.
Will do, will do.
There you go. Matches made in heaven all the time. Yeah, so Banner's workshop will be coming up in a couple of months as part of this same series.
We
So
we need to fix one up.
when we need to fix one up, I'll email you as well in a minute. I'll put the basically if you wanna get on the emailing list. So there is a what do you call it? A list for the Performing Resistance Project where we email people specifically that have come to prior workshops if they're interested in hearing about future ones. You can just check the website, but you can also email us. Chris has very helpfully put it there already. So the email address is at the bottom of the message that Chris has just posted there. So you can email me or Chris if you want to be added to the mailing list, and then we can make sure your name's on there. So you just kind of get that email rather than getting it from like various trade union threads or social media or whatever, which can be a bit more haphazard. So yeah, you're very welcome. And Banner will be coming up. Also, Clara and Gustavo are in Brazil, and they're working with their colleague Helen and the Landless Workers Movement in Brazil, which is another whole kind of different struggle, but also similar struggle in a way. So there's also an international dimension to the project for those who are interested. And we had a session with Street Theatre Group in India. That was our last workshop. So yeah, very interesting to see how these struggles connect across the oceans. Okay, that's all. But lovely to see you all. Take good care of yourselves. Extra special thanks to those in the station pub, and yeah, be in touch. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Great, let's start over. Great bunch of people. Sorry, Connie, I have to move.